Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on the 2016 FAFSA changes. Please take a moment to close out any distractions on your computer or any other applications that may interfere with this webinar. We'll be taking questions throughout the session. Submit them below, and we'll answer them during and at the end of the session. My name is Tyson Schroeder. I'm the Chief Content Officer at Colleges of Distinction. Colleges of Distinction is a trusted resource for guidance counselors, parents, and students. We aim to help parents and students find not just the best college, but the right college. Our webinar presenter today is Daniel Tremuta. Daniel has worked in financial aid and enrollment services for almost 30 years. He has held the title of Associate Vice President for Enrollment Services at SUNY Fredonia since 2005. In this role, he serves as the institution's Chief Enrollment Officer, supervises the Director of Admissions, along with holding the title as the Director of Financial Aid, a position that he has held for almost 20 years. With that, I'll turn it over to Daniel, and he can get started.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. First off, I want to thank Tyson, along with the College of Distinction, for inviting me to lead this webinar entitled Changes to the 2017-18 FAFSA, a Guide to Prior Year. Just to give a little more information about myself, I've been in financial aid for 30 years. I'm the Chief Enrollment Officer in my role as Associate Vice President for Enrollment Services. I'm the Chief Enrollment Officer at Fredonia. I oversee admissions and financial aid. My background is financial aid. My passion in my career has been financial aid. I've led every financial aid professional as president in the state of New York. That was a 3-year term. I've been involved with the Eastern Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. And when Tyson contacted me and just tried to gauge my interest for this type of a program, I think the first thing I want to really relay to everybody is I can't think of a more timely initiative than the one the College of Distinction has just undertaken. Remember, I am the person at Fredonia who's charged with enrollment. I oversee admissions. I oversee financial aid. I also, in the last 5 years, have had 2 daughters attend college. One graduated, and thank you to the Lord, is working, and another one is a junior. So not only from an administrative, director, management, enrollment manager standpoint, I've also gone through this as a parent. And so to those of you who are on the webinar, my goal today is to make you good planners, because one thing I want you to understand right off the top: if you're on the webinar as a parent or as a student, in my career, in my 12 years overseeing enrollment, I cannot think of a better time, a more advantageous time to be a student applying to college. There are so many factors in higher ed right now that are impacting enrollment and the enrollment funnel, the admissions funnel, financial aid packaging, scholarship, that planning, the 3 Ps, plan, process, payoff. If we can dot our I's and cross our T's, your son or daughter, or you as a prospective student, look to reap significant gains. There have been dramatic changes on the federal level in terms of the FAFSA. What institutions are doing in terms of discounting. The student, and i.e. the parent, can be the winner. So my goal today is to lay out a plan, a process for you if you're a high school senior, so that you can maximize the front end of the funnel, which is admissions, and the middle and back end, which is financial aid, and cost and affordability. My email address is on this slide. There'll be a lot we cover in the next 40 minutes. I will take questions through Tyson. I'll be able to see questions. Some I may respond to right away, some we'll save for the end. But all in all, there's my email address. If you have a question at any point, it could be a month from now, 2 months from now, you email me. and say, Dear Dan, dear Mr. Tramuta, I was on this webinar with you. I have a question. It doesn't matter whether it's a public, it's a private, it's in state, or it's out of state. If I don't have the answer, over 30 years, I think I've made enough effective connections where I can get you the answer or refer you to where you can get it. So that's my promise. If you reach out to me, I promise you, all right, I will be a security blanket. I'll be there to help you. All right, let's get into the presentation. I started talking about this a little bit, about why I think it is a wonderful time to be applying to college, to be looking at higher education. And let me just preface that by telling you that Pew's research, the most renowned research entity in this United States of America, did a study 3 years ago. And again, not everybody on this webinar has a degree. And that's okay, because many of you are way smarter than me, and I have too. But what Pew's research showed 3 years ago, that in 5 years, the United States of America will not have enough students with college degrees to fill the job demand in the United States. So when I talk about why it's such a great time to be a student, here's the factors that impact that. Demographics. Let me just tell you all what's happening in New York. From 2009 to 2019, New York State's losing 40,000 graduates. So we have the same number of colleges fighting for a whole lot less prospective students because they're just simply not there. You know, the millennials had less kids than my parents did. I had less children than my mom and their parents. So there are less students who are going to school. And at the same time, we still have the same number of colleges. We're all looking to get the brightest and the best. We're all concerned about return on investment. You know, if I send my son or daughter to college, are they going to get a degree? i.e., are they going to get a job? Because we're competing, and I mean us as colleges, against each other, we are discounting. And when I talk about discounting, I mean that right off the top, we are lowering the price of college based on scholarship. And scholarship can be merit-based. It can be based on your son or daughter or that prospective student's SAT, ACT, high school average, class rank, leadership. It can also be based on financial need. Well, Dan, Mr. Tramuta, how do you decide financial need? Well, we look at the free application for federal student aid. And that's an application task we're going to cover here in a few minutes. All right? Because the free application for federal student aid is going to take a smart pick of the family's ability to contribute. It's going to look at income of the student, of the parent, assets at the time of application, family size, number in college. And after it collects all that data, the federal government's going to come up with something in their formula called congressional methodology, an expected family contribution. So we're going to talk to you about that EFC and how we get it developed so that I can package you or another college can package you. But there is free money at institutions based on merit, academic merit, class rank, high school average, SAT, leadership, athletics, but there's also free money based on financial need. The bottom line is schools are discounting based on both. We're calling it the merit and need-based arms race, which is good if you're a high school senior, if you're a parent of a prospective student. Colleges are putting more and more money into their institutional aid. And I can just tell you at my institution, we tripled in 1 year the amount of money, and this is in millions, that we're putting out, that we offered in scholarship. 5 years ago, Noah Levitz, a renowned enrollment management firm, asked families, tell us the top 3 factors that drove your college-going decision, families. What were the top 3 factors? 5 years ago, major was number 1, and that makes sense. What am I going to major in? I'm going to look at colleges that offer my major. The second most important factor 5 years ago was fit. When I visited that college during my junior summer or during my senior year in high school and they had an open house or a Saturday visit or just a regular daily visit, did it feel like I fit? could I see myself in the library, in the fitness center, sitting in class, in the dance studio? And third was cost and affordability. 5 years later, everybody, 5 years later, fall 16, the same question was asked, and cost and affordability was number one. So what I want you to understand is that we understand that in the financial aid office, in the admissions office, in enrollment management, in our scholarship committees at our campuses. We understand that cost and affordability is very important to families. It's driving their college-going decision. And that's why schools are putting so much more of their own money into need and merit-based aid. We also understand debt at graduation is important. We have a $1.2 trillion national student loan debt right now. You know, some folks are calling it the next subprime crisis, right, from 2008. So we understand that families are asking those questions, that if, we're going to borrow X amount of dollars, what's going to be the return on investment? You look at the program mix development. How many more institutions across the country are offering new academic programs? The growth in STEM programs, science, technology, and engineering, and math. Getting back to demographics. Look at the slide and you'll see the decline. And I'm in the state that says a minus 18%. I'm sitting in New York as the westernmost located campus, way to the left of that minus, next to 18. And I'm recruiting all the way to the right to Long Island, okay? And because in western New York, in the western part of New York State, where you see the minus 18, that's where New York has really taken the bulk of the population decline. So, schools are going outside their region. We go all the way to New York City, Long Island. Schools are recruiting out of state, and they're discounting. Many institutions are bringing their out-of-state tuition down to in-state levels. Who wins? Mom and dad, you win. The prospective student, you win. So it's a great time to be applying. It's a great time to be looking for college. But at the same time, we've got to make sure, mom and dad and prospective student, that we are doing the 3 Ps. Plan, process, payoff. We have to make sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. All right, we've already talked about these factors. Just one other thing I want to show you. This is a slide that looks at 2014 students who took the ACT. And this is a standardized test. In the Midwest, I know you folks take a lot more of you take the ACT. This way in the East, we tend to see more students take the SAT. But this is a standardized test. One of the measures that, not all, that most institutions look at for admissibility, for admissions. In 2014, look at where almost 50% of the students said they were looking in terms of program, in terms of degree demand. And you'll see there, way to the right, engineering, computer science, math, health science administration, technology. And so what you're seeing across the country is you're seeing colleges react to that. That's why we have science buildings going up. All right? That's why you see more and more new programs in health administration, nursing, because students are looking for where a job's going to be. And this will change. In another 3 or 4 years, there's going to be a teacher shortage in New York State, and you're going to see the teacher ed numbers go way up. So some of it's cyclical. This is where it is right now. Okay? All right, so we got into the background. So now, Mr. Tremuta, Dan talked about making us good financial planners. The entire process, if you're a high school senior, or if you're a parent of a senior, all right, when it comes to looking at a specific institution of higher ed, starts with the admission application. Now, what I want to show you, everyone, is I want to talk to you about what my freshmen at Fredonia did over the past year. And it's what students did over the past 40 years. But parents of high school seniors, this is all changing now for you. And it's changing because of something that the federal government did in September 2015. They passed a regulation tied to the free application for federal student aid, the federal financial aid application called prior year. So just keep that in the back of your mind. What I'm going to show you over the next 2 slides, this was the admissions financial aid timeline for high school seniors last year. All right, not your high school seniors, not now, but a year ago. Those high school seniors who right now are freshmen in college. Most of them were told by their school counselors, we want you to fill out your admission applications in the fall of 15 and do it by Thanksgiving. So a year ago, students who were seniors in high school were all told, all right, start my Common App, start my, whether you have a regular state admission application in New York State, we have a SUNY, because I work at a State University of New York institution. We have a SUNY application, and we also, Fredonia, we also use the Common App. So school counselors across the country said, start your admission app. Okay, that was November. By Thanksgiving, and I do many of these programs all the way downstate to Long Island, and I think I can safely say that that's a pretty safe timeline. Get your admission application done by November, a year ago. And then what school counselors said, now look, as soon after January 1st of your senior year, you've applied for admission. Now there's another instrument. It's called the free application for federal student aid. And that free application for federal student aid, and I'm going to try to see whether this is a live link and I can show it. Good. So this is the website that families a year ago went to after January 1st to complete their FAFSA. Mom and dad and students, you're going to go here as well. But you're not going to go here in January, and we're going to get to that. But a year ago, here's where they went. They would have clicked on Start a New FAFSA, and then at that point, there's a sign-in. They would have gone in before they actually went in after January 1st of their senior year. They would have created an FSA, Federal Student Aid user ID and PIN, and they would have clicked on Start a New FAFSA, and here's where they would have entered their FSA user ID and PIN. Okay? Now, what I want to show you is, what I want to talk about is, again, Dan, Mr. Chimita, tell me about this FAFSA. Because, guys, everybody, this is where you're going to be going. But you're not going to be going in, if you're a high school senior, because of prior year, you're going to be able to do this on October 1st. This free application for federal student aid, Mom and Dad, is taking a smart pick, an iPhone pick, a Samsung Galaxy pick of your family's ability to contribute to college. It's going to be looking at your son or daughter's income, your son or daughter's assets. Dan, what do you mean by assets? Cash, savings, checking, stocks, bonds. If your son or daughter has a savings account, checking account, a CD, all right, if they have a 529 in their name, not that it's in your name and they're the beneficiary, if it's in their name, all right, if they own a business, which is unlikely for most students, but this FAFSA, this is looking at the student and the parent. Now, a year ago, it looked at prior year income. So just backtrack with me. Students who are enrolled in college right now are enrolled in fall 16, spring 17. So when they did this last January, the FAFSA looked back 1 year. They were doing their 16-17 FAFSA, and it said to the student and the parents, what was your prior year income? 2015. And then it said to the student, what are your assets as of today? You're filing the FAFSA in January. What do you have in cash, savings, checking, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, CDs? It said the same thing to the parents. As of today, what do you have? The FAFSA doesn't look at your house, Mom and Dad. It does. So if you own your home, it doesn't ask you about your house. The free application for federal student aid does not consider your house an asset. It doesn't consider the value of your retirement an asset. It doesn't ask you about your life insurance cash value. But if you own a second home, if you own a business, if you own property outside of where you live, it is going to ask you what the value of that is. It's going to want to collect what's called the net asset value. Okay? So, students who are enrolled at college right now in fall 16, spring 17, went to this FAFSA.gov. They completed this FAFSA, and it looked at prior year income. Okay? A year ago, those high school seniors, they went to FAFSA.gov. They looked at prior year income, and they completed their FAFSA in January. Some of the private schools may have asked for an additional application. And that's because some of the private schools, when it comes to giving out their own need-based aid, not merit-based aid, need-based aid, may request additional information. And that's where the CSS profile comes in. So what I want everybody to understand in terms of dotting I's and crossing T's is that it starts with an admission application, and then at some point, we're going to talk about when, for high school seniors in a second. There's a financial aid application called the FAFSA. That's the free application for federal student aid. You're applying for all federal grants, loans, work, need-based aid. Some privates also have a supplemental application called the CSS profile. And that's how private schools, private colleges across the country may collect some additional data in awarding their own need-based aid. That was the old timeline. And then what happened? A year ago, President Obama and the Department of Education said, time out. Beginning with the 17-18 FAFSA, we're going to change some things. The FAFSA always used to look at prior year income. But beginning in 17-18, the FAFSA is going to go back 2 years. It's going to look at prior year. So, high school seniors, parents of high school seniors, your child's going to school in fall 17, winter 17, spring 18. You're going to be completing your admission application this fall. But guess what? In 2.5 weeks, you are also going to be able to complete the free application for federal student aid. That link I took you to, FAFSA.gov, instead of waiting until after January 1 of your child's senior year to link it, to get access to it, to complete your free application for federal student aid, you're going to be able to have access to it in 2.5 weeks. And instead of the free application for federal student aid looking at prior year income, it's going to look at prior year. And this was all, as again, a result of this new regulation. So the next slide pretty much sums up what I told you, all right? And what prior year does, everybody, is, think about the families under the old way. They filed their FAFSA after January 1st. The FAFSA looked 1 year back. It's the free application for federal student aid. So it would ask for information on the federal tax return. Well, people didn't even have their W-2s yet in early January. They may not have done their federal tax return for the prior year until March or April. And yet the FAFSA was asking about prior year income. Prior year changes that, because now it's going back to the tax return 2 years prior. Okay? So the FAFSA now is available much earlier. We don't have to wait. And so as we talk about planning, this changes the front end of the funnel in terms of admission and financial aid. Many students are applying earlier for admission. And I'll just give you a sense of what it was like at Fredonia. We would accept those students who are enrolled right now as freshmen. We began accepting them in November. We told them to file their FAFSA in January, and we sent them a financial aid award letter in March. The financial aid award letter listed out their federal, their state, their institutional financial aid. That was the old way. Now, for fall 17, the admissions office at Fredonia will start accepting students in October. And I plan on packaging students in November. And soon after Thanksgiving, we'll be sending out award letters. Now, I want to make this clear. Not every school is doing what I just said we're doing. But a year ago, when we polled financial aid and admissions people across the country, and we said to them, is prior year the change on the FAFSA from looking at prior year income to prior year income, do you see that impacting the admissions application timeline and the financial aid delivery timeline? 75% of folks in admissions and financial aid said no. It's not going to impact our deadlines. 6 months later, all right, 6 months later, 66% of folks said yes, it is going to impact our deadlines. We see our deadlines being moved up. You know, we see us packaging sooner. When I say deadlines, I want to be careful, maybe not deadlines, but we see us accepting students earlier, and we see ourselves packaging students earlier. So when we talk about plan, process, payoff, I always tell high school seniors, always listen to your school counselor. If you're applying to 5 colleges, go to those websites and see when they want you to complete their admission applications, when they want you to do their financial aid applications. Okay, always err in favor of the school. And this is what we said to high school juniors. This is what I was telling high school juniors last spring. High school juniors, all right, they were able to start their common application in March, April, May of 2016, okay? And we're telling them you're able now to also get going on your FSA user ID and password. So, new high school seniors, our high school seniors right now, come October 1st, you're going to be able to go online at FAFSA.gov and complete your FAFSA. Remember, the free application for federal student aid, you're completing that form, Mom and Dad, so that the federal government can take a smart pick, a snapshot of your family's ability to contribute to college. The FAFSA is going to come up with an expected family contribution, an EFC. Like I told you guys earlier, the EFC is going to look at mom and dad's prior year income, and the student who's applying for financial aid, their prior year income. This form is going to be available next month, and the 17-18 FAFSA is going to look at 2015 income. So when you go into the FAFSA in October, mom, dad, student, it's going to ask you what your tax filing status was for 2015. I will file, I have filed, or I won't file. If you filed your tax return, which 98% of you would have, right? 2015 federal tax return, that's done. Those were due in April of 2016. You're going to say, I have filed my tax return. You're going to answer that question, I have filed. And because you click have filed, there's going to be a handshake right within that FAFSA to drop your tax return right in. You won't have to do what the folks have had to do in the past. I have to estimate my income, and then once I do my tax return, I'm going to have to go back to FAFSA.gov and update it. You won't have to update it because now the FAFSA is looking at prior year income. So what I'm just in terms of giving you a plan, I've already told you at Fredonia, we're going to be packaging students with financial aid after Thanksgiving. Now remember, if you're a high school senior, the national date to pay an admissions deposit is May 1. That's not going to change. The deposit deadline will still be May 1. But I'm going to be sending your son or daughter an award letter before Christmas. They're going to have 5 months to understand that award letter, to call and say, look, this is what you've given me. Do we have the opportunity to revisit it? I might have some special or unique circumstances. But you're going to have 5 months, families, to understand the true cost of going to that college. And that's why the Department of Education and President Obama did this. Under the old funnel, I didn't send you a financial aid award letter till March, and you had 6 weeks to decide whether or not you were coming to my school via paying a deposit. Well, now you're going to have a longer time to understand the true cost of going to college. Okay? And that was the intent of prior year. So, high school juniors, this was an email that that I got last spring saying to high school juniors, you can actually start your Common App. So, if we have high school juniors in the audience, families of high school juniors, the Common App now is available. Students can start completing it in their junior year. They can't submit it until after August 1st. But again, I always say to parents, talk to your school counselors, follow their deadline. But what I want you to understand is that because of prior year, the very top of the funnel, when you apply for admission, has been moved up. Because if I'm packaging students by Thanksgiving, and I only package students that are accepted, you can't wait till Thanksgiving to file for admission, because it's going to take a month once you file for admission for the admissions office to load your admission application, to get your essays, to load your SATs. It could take 4 or 6 weeks. Maybe we want first quarter grades. So many of us in our profession see students applying for admission earlier. And with the Common App, a national application, that is now going to be made available to high school juniors. They can't submit it until August 1st before their senior year, but they can complete Part 1 in their junior year. And the point I'm really trying to make is, do you see how the top of the funnel is being moved up? It's being moved up because of prior year. So, Dan, you talked about making us good planners. So what are some things we could be doing right now? If you're a high school senior, I would be querying the websites for where you're going to college and finding out when they want your admission application. Because of prior year, do you want us to apply earlier? Do we need to apply earlier? And if you have a list of 7 schools, you need to contact those 7 schools and say, with this new change of prior year and the FAFSA being made available earlier, do I need to get my admission applications out earlier? Okay? The same thing goes with financial aid. If you're applying to 6 schools and you're completing a FAFSA, you're going to complete one FAFSA in October. You're going to be able to list all 6 schools. If you're applying to 9 schools, you will list 9 schools on your FAFSA, and all 9 of those schools will get your expected family contribution. Well, do those schools want your FAFSA done earlier? And let me tell you something. If 3 of them want you to do the FAFSA in October and the other 6 don't, you're going to need to do the FAFSA in October, because you only do one FAFSA. You list 9 schools, but you do one FAFSA application. So that's the dotting I's and crossing T's that I want you to think about. So find out what admission application timetables are at your schools. When are they going to want your FAFSA completed? Because remember, it's available for you high school seniors. It's now available next month. The FAFSA is available October 1st. And it's going to look back 2 years in terms of income. What else can we do right now? Well, when you go to access that FAFSA in October, you're going to need a FAFSA user ID and PIN. So you should go into FAFSA.gov. And who needs a FAFSA user ID and PIN? The student applying for financial aid needs one. And if parents are married, mom, dad, just one of you need one. If the student lives with mom and mom is separated or divorced, mom needs a user ID and PIN, and the student needs one. So the student financial aid applicant always needs to create a user ID and PIN. That's how they're going to sign their FAFSA online when they do it next month. Think of the user ID and PIN, if you bank online, if you shop online, online. You usually have a user ID and PIN. Well, the FAFSA has a user ID and PIN. And mom and dad, student, that's something we can do right now. Okay? If you're a high school senior, we can't do the FAFSA till October 1st. But remember, there's no reason to wait. I don't want you to wait till January or February. If the FAFSA is available October 1st, there's no reason to wait. And for the first time ever, it's available October 1 to high school seniors. High school juniors, you cannot do this until October 1st of your senior year. Okay, so don't be going in as juniors to FAFSA.gov and completing a FAFSA. Only high school seniors or transfer students or currently enrolled college students will go in next month. Okay, one other thing that I want to talk about. This is the free application for federal student aid. There's a lot of folks out there who've created websites. You might be getting solicitations. Hey, if you contact me, I'll charge you $500 and I'll help you do your FAFSA. Please do not fall for that. Free help is available. I just had an office meeting this morning. My office will be doing a series of FAFSA completion workshops. Guess what month we're going to be doing them? In October. Why? Because for the first time ever, you can do your FAFSA in October. When did we do them last year? January and February. Not anymore. Now we can do these in October because the FAFSA is looking 2 years back. All right? Okay. So we talked about why you're doing a FAFSA. Every October, as early as October 1, families are going to complete the free application for federal student aid. The FAFSA is going to come up with an expected family contribution. That expected family contribution is going to be loaded to the schools that you're applying to. And all of those colleges, once you're accepted, are going to develop a financial aid package. What's in the financial aid package? Grants, scholarships. Those scholarships could be merit-based. They might be need-based. Federal work study is student employment. Every institution has federal work study jobs that are allocated to them from the Department of Education. Students work. Some work 10 hours a week at minimum wage. Every 2 weeks they get a paycheck. Or that work ends up as a credit towards their bill. When you complete the FAFSA, you're also applying for student loans. The federal Perkins loan, the federal Stafford loan. Mom and dad, that used to be the old guaranteed student loan. Now it's the federal Stafford loan. Okay? So you're completing a FAFSA. You're listing those colleges on the FAFSA that you applied for admission to. Mr. Tremuta, do I have to wait until I get accepted to complete the FAFSA? No. You can wait. You can complete the FAFSA. Put those schools on your FAFSA. There'll be within the FAFSA, there's a school code search. So if I'm applying to University of Arizona, you'll put University of Arizona, in Messy, Arizona, and it'll plug in their 6-digit federal school code. When you put that in, that means they're going to get the information they need from your FAFSA to set up a financial aid package. Now, you have to apply for admission. If you don't get accepted for admission at University of Fredonia or Arizona, you're not going to get a financial aid package because you have to be accepted first. Once you apply for admission, you're accepted, and you list that school on a FAFSA, then you're going to get a financial aid package. A year ago, the earliest you would have got that financial aid package was February through April. With prior year, you might see it as early as November, December, January, because prior year has moved up everything. Okay, but again, I want you to understand the components that make up a financial aid package. If you're getting any merit-based money, based on SAT, high school average, class rank, leadership, that'll be in your financial aid package. If you're getting any need-based financial aid, need-based scholarships, based on the FAFSA or based on the CSS profile, those will be in the financial aid package. Work study will be inside the financial aid package, along with loans. Okay, so we're completing the FAFSA so that we can be reviewed for federal and state aid. The federal Pell Grant is a federal grant. Remember I told you that it's looking at your EFC? Well, your expected family contribution cannot be greater than $51.99. If it's greater than $51.99, you don't qualify for Pell. Okay? In New York, along with other states, when you complete that FAFSA and you submit it, you'll see when you go to do your FAFSA next month. And parents, remember, you need a PIN, an FSA user ID and PIN/password. Student, you need an FSA user ID and PIN/password. You can do that now. The student signs in to do the FAFSA with their PIN and password. It looks at prior year income, assets at the time of application, family size, number in college, and then you submit it. Congratulations, you've submitted your FAFSA. Your expected family contribution is this. On that confirmation page, there'll be a link to state grants. And so if your state has a state grant, you're going to want to click on that link so that you can complete some additional information relative to the state grant. The FAFSA is going to be how you also apply for work study. Okay? That'll also be, that's one of the reasons why you're completing the FAFSA, so your eligibility from work study can be looked at. That's all going to be done through the FAFSA. So Dan, so what you're saying, Dan, when I complete that FAFSA, I'm applying for all federal grants, I'm applying for federal work study, and I'm also applying for student loans. And these are the student loans. And right now the interest rate on those student loans are 3.76, and there's really two versions. As a freshman, students qualify for $5,500. A portion of that $5,500 is need-based, and a portion is non-need-based. And that's why there's a subsidized and an unsubsidized Stafford there. Based on your expected family contribution, the individual college will tell you how much subsidized student loan your child's getting and how much unsubsidized. That'll be in your package. I just want to make sure through this slide that you understand there's a difference between the sub and the unsub, because there is. One is based on the student having need, the other one isn't. With the subsidized Stafford, there's no interest accruing on that loan while the student is in school. With the unsubsidized, there is interest accruing. So it's important for students to know the difference. Now, what else can I be doing? How about scholarship search? I've just given you an example here, fastweb.com. Juniors, if you have any juniors or parents of high school juniors, juniors is the best time to start your scholarship search. Your school counselor has a ton of resources tied to scholarship. It's a four-letter word. It's work. But if you do the work, you're going to get free money. Cost and affordability, right? So you want to look at engines like fastweb.com for scholarship. So, guys, what are the implications? All right, look at this. Earlier distribution of acceptance letters. Earlier distribution of financial aid award letters. But if you're going to be part of dotting our I's and crossing our T's, remember we're playing for big stakes, but we've got to get things done earlier. If you're a high school senior, we have to start moving. Well, why do we have to start moving? Because the FAFSA is available earlier now. All right, it's available earlier, October. And it's already, again, we're going to have better conversations about financing college. Families are going to have more time to understand the true cost of going to school. Okay? So we want to make sure that you're part of that. We don't want to wait. There's no reason to wait anymore to complete the FAFSA. No, all right? If you're a high school junior, this could affect when you start visiting colleges. If Mr. Tremuta is talking about me submitting my admission application in September in my senior year so that I can get packaged in November, maybe I have to shift my priorities when I actually visit colleges. All right? So again, prior year is changing the funnel. One last thing, and then we'll open it up back to Tyson. Financial aid offices have the ability. Remember, when you're going to do your FAFSA next month, you're going to complete the 17-18 FAFSA, and it's going to ask families for their prior year income. What's the prior year to 17-18? 15. So it's going to ask you about your 2015 income. Well, what if something has changed? You call Mr. Tremuta and say, Mr. Tremuta, I've completed the 17-18 FAFSA, and I know it's using prior year income, So we reported our 2015 federal income information, but guess what? In 2016 or in 2017, I lost my job. Or we took some money out of our retirement because we had to pay bills. So our income looks higher in 2015. Or our projected year is going to be lower. Schools have the ability to do appeals. That means they can go back in and redo your FAFSA. So what I want you to understand with this last slide is that because if you're a high school senior or a family of a high school senior, we're going to be looking at your prior year income on your 17-18 FAFSA, but we have the ability to use professional judgment and say, wait a minute, yeah, you used your 2015 income, but something's changed in 2016, 2017. We may be able to say, you know what, Department of Ed, we're not going to use 2015 income. We're going to use a more recent income. So in summary, I hope that gives you a guide of how prior year changes everything. The FAFSA is available next month to high school seniors. There's no reason to wait. There's no reason to wait. And if you're applying to 8 colleges and 7 of them say, we don't care, you can fill out the FAFSA in January, but one of them say, no, we really want you to do it in October, you're going to want to do the FAFSA in October, and you're going to list all 8 colleges on it. All right, Tyson, I'll hand off to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dan. Once again, I'm Tyson Schroeder with Colleges of Distinction. Big thank you to Daniel Tremuta for this helpful webinar. I think we might have a little bit of time for a couple of questions. So the first one was someone asked, I have a junior and a sophomore currently in high school. Are there maybe any other changes to FAFSA on the horizon that I might be aware of for going forward?
And that's a great question. The change to prior year is what I call the silver bullet in the financial aid industry, and that took really decades for us to really get through Congress. So there's nothing that I am aware of or our national or state organizations have let us know about. I think these first couple years, the Department of Ed is really going to have to study what this move means. We want to make sure that, again, while we might be moving up timelines, deadlines are not changing. The May 1 is still the admission deposit deadline. But again, applying earlier for admission, getting your FAFSA done earlier it's efficient, and it helps families. It gives you more time to understand the true cost of going to that school. But so anyway, to answer the question, none that I know of.
Okay, great. Let's see. One other question. Let's see. One question: if we wait until January, does it still look at the same info as it would if they applied in October?
And the answer is yes, because the 17-18 FAFSA will be looking at prior year income, 2015. And remember, the 18-19 FAFSA will be looking at prior income, 2016. The 19-20 FAFSA, 2017 income. So it's always going to look 2 years back, but again, it's going to be available October 1st each and every year.
Okay, great. Well, that's all the time we have for today. If you guys had any questions that didn't get answered, please feel free to email Dan. Daniel, what was your email again?
It's Tremuta, T as in Tom, R-A, M as in Michael, T-R-A-M-U-T-A, at fredonia.edu.
Great. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to send them to him or send them to me at tyson@collegesofdistinction.com, and I'll forward them along to Dan. Big thank you to Daniel. Appreciate everyone being on. I hope you guys all gained a good amount of information about the new process. Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome, Tyson. Good luck, everybody.
Yep. Bye.